Juneteenth is the day that we had got free from slavery.
It's a bigger holiday for us because now we're seen as like actual people.
Yo, don't be nervous, okay?
Juneteenth for me, it means a day where you can celebrate your differences and how there's no more slavery.
It's long overdue that this day and time has arrived in recognition of everything that this means for the Black community, specifically the African American community.
Today we're doing a crafts day. It's called Raise Your Flag Day. And so each student and teacher is creating a flag that represents how they understand Juneteenth. And this is really a chance for us to understand our American identity and to interrupt the systemic racism that is so widespread in America.
Celebrating, honoring, recognizing Juneteenth is a step in the right direction of recognizing America's original sin of slavery. I think it's right on time with the racial reckoning that looks like it's happening not just here in the U.S., but the world over.
Well, I think there might be opposition to teaching the history behind Juneteenth. I think that might be because people who hold power are afraid to relinquish that power. And by teaching the whole truth, there is fear that people will lose their power.
Just to have Juneteenth recognized as a federal holiday doesn't mean that the fight is over. There is still much more work to be done. And we can't, think that now there's somehow going to be immediate equality and equity for everyone.
Due to the death of George Floyd, Black Lives Matter movement helped people a lot. People became more aware of our holidays, our history, just the deeper history of America.
I'm saddened that, these tragedies brought to the forefront things that had been happening for over 100 years. I'm kind of saddened by that. What we do know is that the work must continue. The fight must go forward.
Literally, we are free, but systematically we're not. We still have laws that are used against us. We still have things that suppress us.
Just need a dab, a little dab will do you.
We're still dealing with racism. So it's like we free, but how are we free if we still suffering from police brutality? How are we free if we still got whites telling us that we're Black, we'll be nothing more but just Black? How are we free?
The views of some students in One Education Campus. Well, I'm joined now from Washington by Christine Ember, columnist for the Washington Post. What does a federal holiday mean when there is still so much work to be done, as illustrated by those students?
Yeah, that's a great question. And I think that's actually the debate that has been taking place this week and before this week as the prospect of Juneteenth becoming a federal holiday was in the air. Some people, cynics or maybe just realists would say that it's something of a sop. It's a symbolic gesture. Federal holiday is great, but there is a bill to protect the voting rights of Black people that was not passed in the Senate. The George Floyd Justice and Policing Act is still in the backbench of Congress, just withering away, waiting to be voted for. Some people would say that this is an attempt by politicians to take credit for doing something, even just something symbolic, while ignoring, the real work for justice that needs to be done. But I actually think that the symbolic can be valuable too. Recognizing Juneteenth as a federal holiday really recognizes and brings to the forefront the role of African Americans, of Black people in the United States. It is in some ways an official recognition of some of the uglier parts of our history. Juneteenth came about, because Black people in Galveston, Texas learned 2 years late that they had been freed after the Civil War ended. And that is something that we should know about.
But what those students are talking about also alarms some people in America, and in this country, it has to be said, when they're talking about systemic racism and the extent of what is being taught in schools is being tackled in all sorts of states with new laws. Is this something that's, you know, that can be regularized, or does it start impinging on free speech?
Yes, that's a great question. So I think what you're talking about are the many pieces of legislation against the teaching of critical race theory or divisive topics in public schools that are being pushed by Republican legislators in states across the country. They find the idea of talking about America's true history threatening, and they want to ban it. And this does absolutely impinge on free speech. It impinges on, you know, the value of education and what we believe that education is for. Teachers should be free to teach American history, including the ugly parts, including the parts that might make students look a little bit more closely or skeptically at the founding fathers. A lot of this legislation is going to die. It won't pass, or it will be challenged by lawsuits. But this is a threat. And the fact that Republicans and conservatives are pushing so hard against the recognition of just these clear truths about racism in the United States does show that even the symbolic, even the conversations,
Christine,
even things like a federal holiday matter.
I'm sorry to cut you off, but we've got to leave it there. Thank you very much indeed.